Parish Planning and Zoning Board meeting. Would everyone please stand while LaSalle Williams says the pledge and prayer?
Dear Heavenly Father, we give thanks for allowing us to see another blessed day, allowing us to be blessed to serve our community again. We thank you for this board. We thank you for the staff. We pray that blessings upon those who come seeking a solution to a problem. That the Holy Spirit dwell with us and give us a correct understanding that we might do that which is pleasing in our sight. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Roll call, please, Christie.
Chair John Duhan.
Here.
Vice Chair Harold Doucette.
Here.
Mr. LaSalle Williams.
Here.
Mr. Jake Porche.
Here.
Mr. David Connor.
Here.
Mr. Sam Breaux.
Here.
Mr. Whit Baker.
Here.
Mr. Gary Navarre.
Here.
Miss Betty Brown.
Here.
Miss Latricia Cobb.
Here.
And Mr. Elijah Gilry.
Here.
All present.
Thank you. This is an 11-member board. It will take a majority of those members present to grant or deny any requests heard tonight. The meeting will be conducted with me reading the requests from the agenda. The planning staff will give a presentation and report their recommendations. If the applicant would like to add to the staff's presentation, or if someone from the audience has any comments, please come to the microphone here at the corner, state your name and address and the nature of your request. But to do that, all persons wishing to speak, other than the applicant, need to fill out a blue card. If you have not done so, they're in the back of the room over there. After the discussion, the board will vote on each request. I will announce the decision of the board after the vote. All zoning exceptions and variance cases are final tonight. The study will go before the police jury for final action on Thursday, May 20th, 2010 at 5:30 in this same room. This meeting is being taped by Calcasieu Parish Government Channel and can be viewed on Wednesdays and Thursdays following the meeting. For additional run dates, check the website www.cppj.net. Channel 5 in Lake Charles and Sulphur, Channel 61 in Moss Bluff, Westlake, Benton, and DeQuincy, Channel 99 in Carlos and Grand Lake. At this time, everyone please turn off your cell phones, pagers, any other things like that. First item on the agenda is to take appropriate action on case EX 04-015-10, a request by Michael and Bonnie Johnson for a zoning exception to allow a bar pit, 2.7 acres at 2938 East Houston River Road in Ward 4. Ms. Wallace?
This property is located north of Sulphur, and the property encompasses 12.9 acres of A1 agricultural property and I2 heavy industrial zone property. The petitioner would like to get an exception to allow him to excavate dirt, and approximately 80% of the 2.7 acres he plans to dig will be taken from the property to other sites, and then the pit, once it's complete, will be used as a personal use pond. The staff does recommend that the request be granted with the typical stipulations. I like to read those just for the record. That the extraction and hauling be performed from daylight to dusk only. That the extraction is performed in accordance with the site plan on file with the Division of Planning. That the contractor take necessary steps to maintain dust control and prevent spillage on public roads. That the contractor not haul during inclement weather. That the developer obtain a local permit prior to hauling. That the exception be subject to any requirements from the police jury regarding weight limits on parish roads, that the pond not be backfilled, that the development adhere to stormwater best management practices, that limestone or board mats be placed on the access road for a distance of 300 feet from East Houston River Road prior to permit issuance, that a notice of intent for application for a Louisiana Pollution Elimination System permit through the Department of Environmental Quality be submitted prior to permit issuance, and that the exception be for 4 years or when the excavation is complete, whichever occurs first.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. Any questions or comments? Any questions or comments?
Motion for approval?
Got a motion from Mr. Doucette, second from Mr. Navarre. All in favor state aye. Next is to take appropriate action on case EX 03-016-10, a request by Troy Fletcher for a zoning exception to allow a bar pit, 3.4 acres at 1053 Arzine LeBlue Road in Ward 3. Ms. Wallace?
This property is south of Lake Charles, and the overall property dimension is 19 acres. The property is zoned A1 agricultural. The petitioner would like to dig a 3.4 acre burrow pit. 80% of that dirt will be removed from the property, and once it's complete, the pit will be used as a personal use pond. The staff again recommends that this request be granted with the same stipulations except for the time limit. In this case, the petitioner would like to have 5 years to excavate, or when the excavation is complete, it would expire, whichever occurs first.
Thank you. Is anyone here representing Mr. Fletcher? Would you please step to the mic, state your name and address, sir?
Good evening. My name is Troy Fletcher. Address 1053 Arzine LeBlue Road is a physical address. Mailing address is 2838 Links Wilder.
What percent of the dirt is going to stay on site being hauled off, or
20%.
20% will stay on and the
Stay
rest
on
will
site,
be hauled?
yes, sir. And that'll just be used basically. I've got a barn pad to build, and yes, sir, for personal use.
Okay. Any other questions or comments of Mr. Fletcher? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fletcher. I've got three people who wanted to speak in opposition: a Joe Henry, a Charles Ledoux or LaBeouf, and a Reggie Wash. Would one of you like to step to the mic and represent the group?
My name is Reggie Nash. I live at 9586 Miracle Lane, which attaches to this property of Mr. Fletcher's. I have a petition, if I may, signed by the people.
If you'll hand it to Mr. Navarre, please. He'll pass it around.
What we're asking is that they have a borrow pit that is approximately 2 acres over to the east of us, and another borrow pit already that's in progress is approximately 3.5 acres away from us. This one is going to be connected to our backyards, which is, he's saying, probably approximately 50 foot from our fence. Right now, and we have pools that are, we have a pool, and 2 other people on this road has pools. Right now, from the pit that's on the east of us, we're getting dirt, dust in our pools from that. We're just asking, and right now they've got a pond that is dug on that property that was used to build up a house pad, and it has since been filled up with water. We're getting snakes and rats and everything from that pond now. We're trying to get, hopefully y'all will vote against this to help us to. We got kids that are there during the summertime, our grandkids, children, and we're just trying to keep our children safe. And all they have is a barbed wire fence in between us and that pond, and it's what's going to be a pond. We're just trying to keep our family safe.
Any questions of Mr. Nash? Yes, Mr. Connor.
You talked about the other 2 pits, or I think 2 other pits. Are you saying that those pits are on the same property or same owner? Or
One of them is bordering his property. The other one is to the west of us by about 3.5 acres.
But different owners of the property?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
I got one question. How long have those 2 pits been in existence?
The one to the west has been existing approximately 4 to 5 years. The ones to the east is just opened this past year and a half.
Any other questions or comments? Yeah, Mr. Doucette.
The property you live on, is your home on stilts or is it on a house pad?
It's on a house pad.
And how high did you have to build up, or was your home pre-Rita?
Yes,
height?
sir. I've been there for about 30 years.
Okay. I know the homes there now are probably having to build up 18 feet from elevation.
I think it's like 6 foot above. Yes.
I
I know Mr. Vincent lives right down the road. I'm familiar with his property, and he built up quite a bit.
Yes.
I would imagine most of the homes in that area are having to, correct?
Well, the ones that are there, that have went through, there's only a few of them that has rebuilt completely. There's only a couple that is rebuilt completely, and they got some trailers that had moved in. That's the only thing that's being built up. The ones that was there that just went in and remodeled are still at the same height.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Motion for approval.
We haven't seen this petition yet, and you do have a couple other people. Can they come up? Or maybe one of them.
Yeah, if anyone has anything to add to Mr. Nash, anyone speaking in opposition wants to add to Mr. Nash's comments, you may do so.
Got a question.
Yes, Mr. Baker.
The existing pond, is that a permitted pit?
I can speak if you'd like to on my behalf.
If you would, before you speak, let Mr. Fletcher answer that question. If you would, Mr. Fletcher, step up, state your name and address, and tell us about the existing pond before the other gentleman speaks.
Troy Fletcher. Address is 2838 Links Wilder Road, Lake Charles. The existing pond was not used for the transaction of dirt sales. That was only for the house pad, personal use, so it was there. And just bear in mind the A1 agriculture ruling already. As far as the dust control, I mean, I've been real considerate of the neighbors by not going out and disking all of this property and everything right there. In the past, when I lost my home there in Rita, but we'd keep the property mowed and things. So I think some of the concern is that where there's activity, some of these varmints are not going to stay there. I mean, they're, we contend with low-lying areas in that particular vicinity, with these concerns that he has of the snakes during the summertime anyway. So, thanks.
How far from Black Bayou are y'all?
We're just Arsene LeBleu is probably the closest bayou. We're within probably a half a mile of this bayou, right?
Yes, sir. Just a second, Mr. Fletcher.
Mr. Fletcher, you said that your mailing address was Linksweiler.
Yes, sir.
You physically live on Arsene LeBleu Road?
No, sir. We lost our home during Rita. Yes, sir, and we rebuilt the home pad there. The intent is I will be building back there again. So, right, the pad's already constructed.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Please step to the mic and state your name and address.
My name is Charles LaBeouf, and I live at 9392 Miracle Lane. And my concerns are, look at the diagram where he's got his road going out. It runs right in my backyard. He's got a road there already. And his water, when he pumps out the pit, his water already drains across my property into the ditch on Miracle Lane already. And that's what I'm concerned mostly. What is his water pumping out? Where's he going to go when he pumps his pit out to dig the pond? And not to mention the dust. Dust collects in my house already from the pond that's southeast of where I live. And whenever they're out there working, it's close enough now that I can hear them talking. I can tell you just everything they say if I'm standing in my backyard, if I'm not eating dust from it collects on the roof and my buildings and everything else. And not to mention the rats that come out of there and snakes and stuff. I can sit in my backyard in the afternoon and watch the rats playing around the backyard all they want, I mean, it's just getting, it's kind of a hassle to sit outside in the afternoons, we're eating dust and sand flying all over the place. And that's basically all I have to say.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Any other questions or comments?
Question. I was wondering, just a question for the staff. Each of these folks who live out in the agricultural area that we're talking about now would have had to come before us to get an exception to be able to get a permit to build in an agricultural zone. Is that correct?
Legally, yes. To take dirt off of the property, yes.
I'm talking about to go put a home in an agricultural zone.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
As long as it was built after 1980 or so. Yeah.
Well, I bring up that question just because, you know, we've had this discussion before. If you're going to go and get an exception to move into an agricultural zone, you're moving in an agricultural zone, which means farming and all those kind of things. So the dust issue and the rats and the snakes issue is inherent to the agricultural community. So you've got an exception to move out there, but you can't go out there and then say, I don't want dust, because you're talking about cutting back farmers. So
Well, they wouldn't have needed an exception, but they would have gotten a permit from our office. Just to clarify. To put a residence in agricultural zoning is
Right.
allowed by right. So they
The point's the
wouldn't
same.
Right.
The point's
Yeah.
the same. You live in an agricultural zone, that's what goes on in an agricultural zone. So
Yeah, you're right. They have a lot of rats in the agricultural zone. Any other questions or comments?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Got some more.
I've got a motion for approval for Mr. Navarre. Second for Mr. Doucette. Our electronic voters are not working, are they?
No, they're not.
Let's do a roll call vote.
Okay. Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Doucette?
Yes.
Mr. Williams? Mr. Bro?
Yes.
Mr. Porsche?
Yes.
Ms. Cobb?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Navarre?
Yes.
Mr. Gilry?
Yes.
And Chair Duhan?
Yes.
11 for.
Passes unanimously. Next, number 7, take appropriate action on case VA 03-007-10, a request by Randolph W. Harper for a zoning variance to allow a non-conforming lot. Required is 43,560 square feet. He's requesting 12,000 square feet at 2940 Renee Road in Ward 3. Ms. Wallace?
You all discussed this matter at your last meeting, and you deferred it because the applicant was not able to be at the meeting. He is here tonight if you all have any questions for him. The property is located in the Old Town Road area of Ward 3. It encompasses .27 acres of R2 zone property, and the reason that the property is so small is that it was subdivided due to a road home purchase of a residence that was on the original lot. So the petitioner bought this property, and it was 12,000 square feet at the time of the purchase, but it was a non-conforming lot. And the petitioner would like to have an exception, or I'm sorry, a variance to allow this non-conforming lot so that he can get a permit to place an RV out there temporarily to be moved on and off depending on his work schedule. The staff does recommend that this request be granted with the stipulation that the electrical service box cannot exceed 100 amps. So this would not allow a permanent dwelling to be placed on this property. The petitioner is interested in purchasing the road home property that was subdivided out from the original lot, and we have advised him that he would need to revisit the board at the time of that purchase if it goes through.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Any board members?
I think the intention was to have him here to answer those questions.
Well, let's do it. Is Mr. Harper in the audience? Yes, sir. Would you step to the mic and state your name and address, please, sir?
Randolph Wallace Harper, 2940 Renee, Lake Charles, Louisiana.
Would you just briefly tell the commissioners what your intentions are of having an RV there?
My intentions right now are just to live there. I work offshore 2 weeks, so I'm gone half the year anyway. And I'm hoping to acquire the property next door so I can build a home, work several more years, and retire.
Any questions of Mr. Harper? Mr. Baker?
The sewer, what you going to do there?
The sewer, it's a self-contained camper totally.
Yes, sir.
Water and septic tanks and black water, gray water. I would personally like to tie on to the camper with my truck and move it. I can take it to any campsite. Sam Houston Jones, most major truck stops have dump sites. All your major rest areas have dump sites, or I'll pay K-John or somebody to dump the tanks. I have no intentions of dumping them on the property. But that way at least...
Seems like you're going to have that thing set up, right?
Yes,
It's not
sir.
like you're going to be there for a weekend or something. It's going to be pretty well set up.
Yeah, it's going to be just...
You're going to take it down and go dump it?
Well, to set it up, I push a button to slide out, slide in. I push another button, the hydraulic jacks go up. Camper goes down on my truck. 5 minutes, I'm out of there. It's very sophisticated.
How often do you have to dump?
Depends. All my tanks are electronically gauged. Both my freshwater tanks, gray water and black water. It's all control panel. I've dumped the tanks. I've had the camper probably 4 or 5 months. I've dumped them twice.
Any other questions?
I do. Where do you currently have it set up?
It's right there on the property right now. It's just sitting there. It's totally self-contained. I'm just not living in it. But it does have a generator package. It can run off propane and a generator package. I can go out there and just start it and run it right now, but I'm not living on it right now.
Any other questions?
I'm just asking for the electricity so I can plug it in direct without
Right.
running the generator
Without
because
running
it's a
the
little bit
generator.
noisier.
How is this police?
Pardon?
How do we police this? Make sure that he does what he says he's going to do. He has nowhere to tie on to, sewer-wise.
Right, I agree with you, but the only thing is if he doesn't have a sewer tie on, how can he dump, not unless he dumps it right under his RV, which I don't think he would do.
What's to stop him from putting in a septic tank when ain't nobody out there looking around?
I think you got to go through the, would you answer, Ms.
Yes.
Wallace?
If he's got electricity, he don't have to have no permit. I mean, he can do 255-gallon barrels. I've seen it happen.
Well, it wouldn't be legal, and obviously the neighbors, typically police those kind of things, and they would let us know that if something like that would be done, and we could enforce our regulations.
Yes.
How many gallons of storage do your tanks?
I honestly don't know. But if I had to guess, I'd say they're 50, 70-gallon tanks.
Chairman, no question.
Yes, Mr. Gilroy.
What are these other buildings back here? The yellow building, the white building back?
The other buildings, the garage in the back is on the property I purchased. The mobile home, it's kind of a catch-22. It's on Road Homes property and my property, and then that's Road Homes property that bought that small section of the property. That's why I'm trying to acquire it. I think they're under contract to take all that out. I wish they would.
Any other questions or comments? Any motion?
Motion for approval.
Got a motion from Mrs. Brown, a second from Mrs. Cobb. Let's do a roll call vote, please. Christie?
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Doucette?
No.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Bro?
No.
Mr. Porsche?
No.
Ms. Cobb?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
No.
Mr. Connor?
No.
Mr. Navarre?
No.
Mr. Gilry?
Yes.
Chair Duhan?
Yes.
5 for and 6 against.
Fails by 1 vote. Moving on to the next item. Take action on case RZ04-018-08, a request by Charles Atherton to amend stipulation number 1 and number 2 of ordinance number 5513 to read as follows: that the development adhere to the revised site plan on file with the Division of Planning and Development, and 2, that 6 recreational vehicles, RVs, be allowed on the property for recreational purposes only on Wynwood Drive in Ward 4. Ms. Wallace.
This property is in the Westlake area, and overall, the property has 7.25 acres. The petitioner would like to place a total of 6 RVs on the property, and to do this, the board and the police jury would need to amend 2 stipulations from the original ordinance when the property was rezoned in 2008. You just read those, but just for the record, stipulation number 1 is that the development adhere to the revised site plan on file with the Division of Planning and Development, so we would have to have the board approve a new site plan. And then the second stipulation at the time of the rezoning was that only 1 RV would be allowed. So the petitioner has requested that stipulation be amended to allow 6 recreational vehicles on the property. The staff recommends that the request be granted, but that only 1 additional recreational vehicle be allowed on the property. So that would be a total of 2 RVs. And the applicant does wish to speak about the staff recommendation.
Thank you. Would someone representing Mr. Atherton or Mr. Atherton step to the mic, state your name and address?
My name is Maurice Tynes.
I wish to speak on behalf of Mr. Atherton. My home address is 352 Patty Lane in Sulphur. Actually, it's Ward 6. Not being a city boy. The interesting thing about this, ladies and gentlemen, and I address ladies and gentlemen in the audience as well who are here to oppose some of what we're asking, is that this is a very peculiar situation because I have examined as closely as I know how and read as well as I know how the entire zoning ordinance where the various classifications are described as well as the general provisions in the zoning ordinance, and I find absolutely zero statement concerning recreational vehicles in R1. There's nothing that prohibits recreational vehicles, one or more, in R1. The same thing in RM. When you start talking about recreational vehicles, manufactured homes and mobile homes are discussed by statute, by ordinance. Mobile homes specifically do not include recreational vehicles, and manufactured homes, which is a statute referred to in the Code of Ordinances under the zoning section, is also defined by revised statute 51:911, and that does not include recreational vehicles. The only place recreational vehicles are mentioned or addressed or permitted or prohibited or limited or governed is in our MHP, which is manufactured housing park, basically. And in that particular portion of the ordinance, it simply says that a permitted use is recreational vehicle parks, parentheses, rental spaces. It's quite obvious that the intent here was to regulate only commercial recreational vehicle spaces, not privately owned by the landowner and the landowner's family. And so what happened was, because of this understanding apparently by everyone, staff included, Mr. Atherton called a couple of years ago and said, I want to put an RV out there on my 7 acres, basically in the woods, across the canal from houses, two lots right across from where he parked, he owns actually. What should I do? And he was misinformed, unintentionally, that he needed to be R2 to have an RV, which was simply legally not correct. If you don't have the ordinance at hand, I'm sure we can get you an R1 and an RM and an R2 and read it and see it does not govern or allow the police jury or the zoning commission any right or any authority to govern RVs other than commercial rental spaces. So he then came and asked, as he was trying to be legal and honest and straightforward, to change his R1 designation, because everything out there is R1, to R2. And when that was done by the zoning commission, it went on to the police jury, and at the last moment, in a surprise turn of events, Mr. McMillan said, I would vote for it, but I want only one out there. And I think he announced, and I wasn't there to hear it, that it's because his constituents so desired. Well, that's good. That's good politics. He needs to do what his voters want him to. But the problem is there's no legal rationale for doing it. That is to say, he could not say, well, in R2 we only allow the RVs that the landowner wants out there because our ordinance allows us that authority. It's absent. And so there was no reason to go from R1 to R2. I would guess everyone here lives in R1. If you want an RV in your driveway, you do not have to call down here and get an R2 designation in your R1 driveway. I don't know why anybody thought that to tell him that, but they did, and so he did what he should have done, and it turns out he didn't need to do it in the first place. So it's really a nullity. It doesn't really count. And so I could really tell him, go right out there today and park 6. As long as he and his family own them, he's not violating any law whatsoever. He doesn't want to do that, though. He wants to come here and ask, and he's actually asked me to amend and say lift the restrictions on the RVs on his 7 acres, because if he does get a subdivision out there and he's got 7 lots, you could wind up with 7 RVs, or 10 lots on the 7 acres, and 10 RVs, as long as each lot owner owned an RV. So we're not, as a parish, regulating RVs that are owned by the lot owner, as far as whether you can park one or more in your front yard or in your driveway. I'm sorry to announce that in a way, but that's the way it is. So he's asking you to go really back to the R1 situation by allowing him 6, which really the appropriate thing to do is not limit to 6, but say there's no limit because you have no authority to limit as long as he owns them, he and his family, and he's not renting spaces so that he has an RV park. There are a lot of folks here opposing it, and they're opposing it because they say four-wheelers are being ridden over there, and actually people have broken in. He's finally had to put railroad rails up with gates locked to keep folks out. A lot of people are riding four-wheelers over there, including some of his own grandkids. But that's not illegal either on that 7-acre place. I can tell you with great security that the sheriff and the DA has looked into anything going on out there at the request of Mr. Atherton and his family, and they have found no illegal activity out there on their investigation and in their visit to the property. If there is such out there, it would not be Mr. Atherton, and it's not known by any of his folks. So he respectfully requests, in effect, leave it at R2, lift the restrictions on the RVs, and it's just like putting him back to R1. So let me just point out real quick, and I don't mean to overstay my welcome here. Let me just point out if a recreational vehicle, and what is that, by the way? If a recreational vehicle is thought to be so bad, look at all the things that you can do in R2 that would be much worse. It's just simply not so bad. And by the way, he can take a trailer and put 12 four-wheelers on the trailer and drive out there on a Sunday afternoon and unload all 12 of them and line all his grandkids and his kids up on them, and they can ride all afternoon. That's legal. Not suggesting he would do that. Doesn't care to do that. He's not trying to be obnoxious, but I think he's got his legal rights here, and for some reason they weren't properly viewed, and the result was we had this R2 designation with this limit of 1, and now the staff saying only 2. The staff doesn't have a right to limit to any number. I speak with respect and deference to the staff. They do a good job, and they're sincere in what they say. They're just wrong. I would just mention in closing that as far as we can tell, when you look at the site plan that is somewhat crudely drawn here, but which was on the screen, Mr. Atherton owns the 2 lots directly across from what's shown on the site plan as a water well where these 6 RV spaces were put in here. And he bought those 2 because he thought it would be wise to be buffered over there. And the canal is probably, I don't know, 30 to 40 to 50 feet wide, and the folks that live across the canal are concerned about what's going on down here on the southern section. The northern section is all woods. I think you'll hear from someone up here at the north tip of the property, and maybe a couple of scattered out, but there are very few houses here. And as you saw in the brief, and you see on the photograph, the aerial photograph, that's basically woods. That's not in the middle of a residential subdivision. And so what we're doing is respectfully asking you, oh, maybe I'm wrong, maybe that is, maybe the Krause and Madigan 200 acres over there is a subdivision, and I can't see the houses, but nevertheless. So I'm simply asking the commission to do something I normally don't ask or put it in the form of an issue we normally don't have, and that's sort of a political issue. How many folks are for or against something, and do they have some legal basis on which to contest this? I'm not saying they're supposed to like the RVs out there and the noise and the dust. I live in an area that's on 40 acres north of an 80-acre subdivision, and I don't like hearing all that racket my neighbors throw out because we've lost a lot of trees due to Rita, and that's a noise barrier we no longer have. So I'm understanding people that don't like to hear the noise of a four-wheeler. But to say you only can put 2 RVs on your property is not the way to go at that. And so what I'm asking you to do is look at the legalities involved. Okay. Unfortunately, these folks that don't want that kind of activity over there need to find another way to ask that to be stopped. And the way they're choosing, And again, with due respect to them, some of whom are my friends, that's simply not giving us a legal rationale with which to operate. And when you put yourself in the position as a body making these sort of decisions, and later the police jury as well, you have to have a legal rationale, not just something you want to do. And you all typically do have a legal rationale. You have authority under which you work. That's the ordinance. There's no authority to limit RVs on this 7 acres.
Mr. Tynes, I would argue that a mobile home requires an R2. Now, if you got wheels on a closed-in vehicle that has kitchen, bed, and whatever, you can call it an RV, but it's a mobile home, and it has to be restricted, and we got rules and regulations regarding that, and that's why I think, and I'll ask our attorney to address that, but I think that's why it was in. This is really a mobile home under another name, and that's why we requested it that it be under R2. I guess you can argue that in court, and you maybe win it, but
With all due respect, Mr. Duhon, and you know I've been with you, and again, you before, and you know how much I respect you, but I'll point out Section 16.1 under your own ordinance says, very simply, one sentence. A mobile home is defined as a structure transportable in one or more sections which is built on a permanent chassis and designed to be used with or without a permanent foundation when connected to the required utilities. That's the reason you say what you do, and that's the common sense response. But the very next sentence says it does not include recreational vehicles or travel trailers. In your own ordinance, it says you're not supposed to consider it that way. And in that very ordinance, it also refers to the revised statute. 2 inches above it, 51:911, and the manufactured home is defined in that statute, and the manufactured home is defined in a way that absolutely excludes recreational vehicles. And so with due respect and due deference to you guys who work so hard to do this right, there's no legal basis.
Mr. Connor, you had a question?
Yes, to the staff. The request, or let's go back to the original ordinance, or the original revision to zoning. Was that allowed a pad where utilities were allowed with a T-pole like was asked for earlier, or any kind of sewer hookup, or is it strictly to park an RV on that property?
There's no pad, no utility, no RV hookup. It's self-contained.
Well, I'm asking him, even if though he's not doing that, I'm asking him if that was the request, and is that what the stipulation says?
That's my understanding, yes.
Yes, an electrical permit was given. I don't know if it was ever energized, but I can tell you that it was obtained.
Electrical permit was obtained in order to be able to hook up to that recreational vehicle.
That's correct.
Well, he has a service drop out there to have utilities in case he wants a water well, in case he wants to do other electrical activity out there, not just the RV. The RV, what's happened, I mean, there's lots of times there's no RV out there.
I understand, but what I'm getting at is what the request was and what was granted previously. Was it an allowance for an RV to go be parked out there, a standalone, self-contained, or was it that along with a permit to allow utility hookup? And they're saying to me that I'm understanding you're saying that it was a allowance to a permit to allow hookup, whether he did it or not.
For water well or whatever.
Okay, so
I have the ordinance, and it simply says one recreational vehicle is allowed on property for recreational purposes only on the property described as, and there's nothing in here about can or can't have electrical utilities and so on.
But there would have been a permit request and a permit granted if that, right? Am I okay? And so that was granted, whether he's used it or not. Right. Okay. That being the case, are we now? This doesn't state whether a request is being, or has a permit request been come to the staff to get permits for additional utility hookup, or is it strictly they want to go park self-contained RVs on this private property?
Well, typically the permit request would follow the zoning hearing.
Okay, so until that zoning hearing comes and until the decision comes, then he may come and or may or may not request the permit hookup. Okay.
And obviously the RVs aren't meant to be out there 365, 24/7. I mean, that's the nice thing about them. You bring them and come and go. Like everybody's RVs. They're all, I don't know what a recreational vehicle is. You pull it behind your vehicle. I guess a pickup truck like the rodeo friends of mine, they put a camper on the back of their truck. It's an RV. I mean, They're self-contained. You know, basically, you got to move them because you got to go dump your sewage someplace. There's no sewage disposal unit out there. And by the way, there's an incorrect statement on this here. The parish has never approved it because there's no need for it. The RVs are self-contained. So it's really not applicable should be the correct answer. Anyway, I don't want to keep repeating myself, but that's my legal position on it. I appreciate some deference to that. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
I got one question.
Yes,
The
Mr. Williams.
recreational vehicle that is now present, does anyone reside in it, or is just in and out?
There's nothing on the property right now.
Nothing?
No residents.
The recreational vehicle is not on the property as of today.
In our, do we have a description of what a recreation vehicle is? Yes, Mr.
In our ordinance,
Smith.
a recreational vehicle is defined as follows. A vehicle which is built on a single chassis is 400 square feet or less when measured at the largest horizontal projections, is designed to be self-propelled or permanently towable by a light-duty truck, and is designed primarily not for use as a permanent dwelling, but as temporary living quarters for recreational, camping, travel, or seasonal use.
So,
By definition.
We hereby adopt that definition.
okay, but we also adopt the temporary in there also. This thing doesn't come and go. I assume it stays, so it's not temporary.
Well, they'll come out there like in the summertime because they have.
I'm not talking about them. I'm talking about the vehicle, the recreational vehicle coming and going.
No, that's what I was about to say. They've got access to the canal and it goes out into the river, and so summertime you go park your RV out there and come out on weekends, put your boat in the water, go back and forth, and leave it out there for the summertime. There's no point in leaving it past there if you're not going to be using it. So it comes and goes. That's the value of it.
So the 6 he's proposing would come and go?
I don't think he's going to be out there putting 6 out there for a while, but he's got 5 kids, and ultimately they may all want to have a chance to put their various 6 in and out, and so it would be 6 different ones out there from time to time, trying to stay legal. But I'm saying I don't think you can limit any RVs out there as long as you're not renting spaces. It's not a park.
Yes, Mr. Connor.
Does Mr. Atherton intend to request permits for electrical hookups for these trailers if this stipulation is
If he has to park 6 at one time out there, he would, I suppose, need service drops for each, but I don't think that would be necessary. A small generator would do it, and they're not going to really run 6 nonstop all the time.
Well,
he's not going to make a park out of it. That's not the idea. He hadn't even put 2 out there. One hadn't even stayed out there that he was allowed.
I'd like to hear from some of the citizens in objection.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you all.
Mr. Letard, did you want to speak, sir? State your name and address, please.
Bobby Letard, 3749 Peyton Road in Westlake. Have a petition in opposition. And before I get started, one, I'd commend y'all for 11 people on the board and 11 being present. I think that's quite a commitment, and I certainly appreciate it. 'Cause this is certainly important to us, and I'm glad that all of y'all are here. I'm not going to stand up here and quote law to you. That's not my job. I can tell you what our concerns are, and that's what I intend to do. I have actually a copy that I can give to each of you. And it'll be what I go through. But, Mr. Chairman, members of the Zoning Board, I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to appear to address our opposition to the request that comes before you. We live in what's considered a residential neighborhood consisting of single-family residential homes that are for the most part owner-occupied. The request before you could change that drastically. This is an old issue that was addressed originally in June 2008. The applicant was given the R2 classification that he asked for, but with the stipulation that only one RV unit could be placed on the property. We are indeed grateful for this board's wisdom in deciding to impose the limitation. I'd hate to think what we'd have faced in the last 2 years without that stipulation. It seems that the property has become a dirt track for ATVs on the weekends that the applicant is present. Many of the people here today live across the canal within 150 feet of this property and are no longer able to use their properties as they'd like because of the noise and dust that these vehicles produce. When the applicant was approached about curtailing some of the ATV use by the property owners, neighbors if you will, they were subjected to total disrespect from the applicant in the form of cursing and obscene gestures to the point where the sheriff's department's been called out 4 or 5 times. At least one citation has been written. We're told that it's probably a civil matter, which we can accept, but we'd prefer to fight the issue of one unit as a whole trailer park, as opposed to a whole trailer park. One lady whose husband has a tracheal tube due to throat cancer can't allow him outside when the ATVs are present for fear of the dust that's stirred up that might go into his tube. When she approached him about curtailing the use, she received the same treatment as some of the other people did. A once quiet neighborhood has now become, when the vehicles are present, one of noise and dust that limits use of our property. I tell you this not asking to solve our problem, but letting you know that it exists so that your decision today will not compound our problem. Use of our property has been limited by the placing of one unit out there and what goes with it. There's no telling what vehicles would be associated with 6 units present. We plead with you to leave the zoning as it is with the stipulation in force. Other issues at hand would be how drainage could be affected, how wetlands could be affected. We have a great concern about construction material that's been dumped on the site and whether or not it meets parish approval and whether or not its placement has changed the flow of the drainage. Understand that that's something for a different agency, but it is a cause of concern. We have quite a number of people here today, and I would ask them, if it meets with y'all's approval, to raise their hands that are opposed to this.
Thank you.
There are some here who can speak directly to some of the issues if you need them to. We also, and I have given you the petition that we'd like to have entered into the record. In closing, we don't have a problem with the applicant enjoying his property more than we would want someone to tell us how we can enjoy ours. However, we do find it distasteful that his purpose in being in the neighborhood seems to be to do things that he obviously can't do where he currently resides. Invest in the property just as we have. Build a home. Most of the homes directly across the canal from the applicant's property are worth in excess of $200,000, and several are worth in excess of $300,000. That represents a considerable investment for most people. These are the homes that would be most affected by this change, causing not only more disruption in their daily life, but a significant reduction in their overall value. Our concerns, again, are a negative effect to drainage and wetlands. Again, that's someone else's, another agency's deal, but a concern for us. An increase in traffic, increased wear and tear on our road, an increase in ATV noise and dust, a change in what we feel is a quiet residential neighborhood to commercial, and a reduction in property values. I'm not here to quote law or scripture to you. That's between Mr. Tynes and Mr. Smith. But, let him challenge that in the court, just as we're told we have to challenge whether or not the noise is a nuisance. The applicant currently has the R2 zoning classification with a limitation of 1 unit on the described property. Our plea to you is that you'd maintain the classification that was given just 2 years ago with the stipulation of 1 unit. Please protect the integrity of our neighborhood and deny his request. And I thank you, and I'll be glad to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Latardi. Questions? Comments? Yes, Mr. Doucette.
I want to thank you for your time and
Thank you.
appreciate it. I think, in my opinion, with the presentation Mr. Tynes gave and the presentation that you gave, the respect to both people and their properties, I would like more clarification on the issues that Mr. Tynes brought up. And in order to do that, I would feel as though we as a board would need to maybe give Mr. Smith more time to give us something. I would make a motion that we table it for 30 days.
Got a motion to delay for 30 days in order to get a legal opinion. I got a second from Mr. Navarre. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Delayed 30 days.
Thank you so much for your time.
We'll come back with a legal opinion. Thank you, Mr. Tynes. Next,
I'd like to make just a general comment.
yes, sir, if it's very brief, go right ahead.
Yes, sir.
Since the issue is over with.
Exactly what to do with
Just hold it.
Okay. Do you want me to
Just
hold
state your name and address, and I'll give you 1 minute.
My name is Paul Ringo. I'm a resident of Calcasieu Parish. I live at 820 11th Street in Lake Charles. I have no personal interest in this at all. What really concerns me, though, is that legally the police jury is going beyond what the ordinance says.
Sir, that's why we delayed it
Yes,
30
sir.
days,
I
and
understand.
we will entertain anything you want to say
Okay.
in 30 days.
Okay.
Sir, it's
but-
over with. You're out of order.
Well, but I just,
No, sir,
I just
you're out of
want to
order. I
make one
gave
comment.
you. No, sir, you're out of order. Thank you very much. You're welcome to come back in 30 days. Next, number 9, take appropriate action on case RZ03-003-10, a request by Tower Land Company and J. Lawton Company for a rezoning of agricultural A1 to C2 general commercial to allow commercial development, a truck stop and restaurant on Gulf Highway in Ward 3. Ms. Wallace.
This property is south of Lake Charles and encompasses about 5 acres. The property is zoned agricultural now, and the petitioner would like to rezone it to C2 general commercial. The owner is Tower Land Company and J. Lawton Company, and Tower Land and J. Lawton will lease the property from Harry Shaheen, and Mr. Shaheen plans to build a truck stop and restaurant at this location. The development is located within the design corridor that was set up by the interim development ordinance. So any development that he does would have to comply with the design standards, and you can see that this is not the typical truck stop and restaurant that we would see in this area. So his preliminary designs do meet those standards. The staff does recommend that this request be granted with a number of stipulations. I'd like to read those. That the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided that the Director of Planning and Development is able to make adjustments in light of any technical or engineering considerations that come up. That the following submittals are made prior to issuance of a certificate of occupancy, and those would be an approved drainage impact analysis or a drainage waiver, Department of Health and Hospitals approval regarding the sewer system, Department of Transportation and Development approval regarding access, and a notice of intent for application for a Louisiana Pollution Elimination System permit through the Department of Environmental Quality. That the development adhere to stormwater best management practices, that the development comply with standards outlined in the interim development ordinance for signage, landscape, building design, and canopies, and any other items that might come up, that drives and parking areas be hard surface, and that construction must begin within 1 year of permit issuance, or the property will revert to A1 agricultural.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. I think someone representing Tower Land Company. State your name and address, please, sir.
Actually, my name is Harry Shaheen, and I represent Five Star.
Okay.
We have a surface lease that was obtained from the Lawton. That's conditional upon this rezone.
Yes.
So we have a little PowerPoint we're going to turn on here to just show y'all a little bit about us and what we're doing.
Okay.
Somebody sleep on us. Okay, just a little bit about our company. Our company is Five Star. We currently all reside here in Calcasieu Parish. From DeQuincy. My address is 1315 Hard Grove Road. I'm going to ask him how to work this. A little older than this PowerPoint. Okay. These are our current locations that we have in Calcasieu Parish. We have a location, 2 locations in Moss Bluff. One is on 171 in Joe Miller Road. We've been there since 1995. We constructed that facility. We have a facility on Highway 378 North Perkins Ferry Road. We got some pictures of these places we're going to show y'all in just a second. We own a place in Vinton on Exit 7. It's called the Delta Fuel Stop. It's actually in the town of Vinton. And we have a place in Starks, Louisiana, which is a Starks truck stop. And what we're proposing is we've been looking pretty hard at South Lake Charles for probably a couple of years. Been difficult to obtain a spot. We kind of reached out here and did a surface lease. going to make a substantial investment on that surface lease because we feel really good about that location. We put this in here just to show you a little more about our company. I believe companies should pursue their passions as well as their businesses. In the last couple of years, the police jury has really worked hard on a litter program, and litter is one of my passions. I believe it's something that's absolutely ridiculous, and that it's very easy to find a trash can. Here in the last year, we ran a promotion at all our facilities, and we promoted the anti-litter campaign. We actually gave away a smart car, which we had wrapped at one of these sign places. And we brought in a loyalty system, and we actually gave that car away last year in trying to help promote the parish with its new litter program. So we really like that program and want to show you the kind of things that our company is doing. These are some of our properties. The one on the right is the proposed property that will be on Common Street. It's about, I'd say, 600 to 800 feet north of the Common Street Goche exit corners. It would be catty corner to Burton Coliseum. I believe that location is a gateway to Grand Lake, Hackberry, Big Lake, and we propose to pursue a lot of fishing things in this store. We believe that market is there. We also believe that to stay in the convenience store business, we've got to reinvent convenience. This store would be more between a convenience store, a Walgreens, and a mini grocery store. We will be selling produce, fresh meats, and those items that you would typically go to get at the grocery store. These are some pictures of our interior stores. I can't read that, but it looks like, yeah, that's the inside of several of our stores. The proposed location, again, is we will have a full-service attendant at times. We will try to reinvent convenience with a drive-through that allows someone to actually text our location or call in and would like gallons of milk, deli meats, and they can actually come to our facility and get those products through our drive-through window. Just a little more about reinventing convenience there. We really believe that this is the future of our industry. These are some exterior pictures of some of our facilities. The facility will include a casino with video poker machines. Most of our facilities have these. They've become part of our industry. If we're going to be in this industry, basically, we almost have to have that as part of our facility. There will be 2 buildings located there. One will house a store, and one will house a video gaming and a new type of entertainment facility, which is kind of built around a place that we've been to quite a few times called Dave & Buster's and a Jillian's. They have them in Houston. These places are really large. This place will not be that big, but it's kind of a new form of entertainment. It's we'll have different kind of games that some adults like to play. I don't know. It's really kind of different. It's a great place to be entertained. We will have some live entertainment, which includes just maybe someone playing a guitar, those kind of things. One of the issues always with our industry is our location of churches or public schools. This is a Google map that shows our distance from any churches. This is always addressed in our industry. I think the closest facility is within about 5,000 feet from where our location is. We spent a lot of time with due diligence to make sure that this location was something suitable for our industry, and we believe that it is. And I think this is public schools and shows that we are over 4,000 feet from any public school. That's about it.
Okay. Any questions, comments, Mr. Shaheen?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. Connor.
This is about the layout of the store versus your canopy,
Okay.
and I guess probably I should first address this to the staff on the IDO. I'm asking this as a reminder. The interim development ordinance is this one. This is one of the corridors.
Yes.
Does that put design for a project like this where you might put that canopy behind the store and let your storefront be at the road? I'm asking the question. It does not.
In the IDO, it just calls for the canopies to be pitched for the roof or a parapet wall.
And our design is actually a wood frame canopy with shingles on it.
Mm-hmm.
It does not look anything like a traditional. I think they have a picture in their packet of that.
You'll have a rendition in the packet.
Yeah, we did.
So yeah, even the store will have a hip roof. It has a hip roof, and the canopy actually has a hip roof with architectural designs on it. So that design, I think, meets those requirements.
Yeah, and I don't presume to think that this is our place to say this or mandate anything like this, but those kind of designs that we talked about when we were going through this community development process and the process for Vision Calcasieu, we saw a lot of designs where you put in order to make it more aesthetically pleasing, your storefront, your design storefront to where the front, which you have a very beautiful rendition of that with canopies behind. Is that even an option, or is that a costly thing that would just prohibit you from?
I think, in all honesty, that'd be very difficult in our industry. It's still about convenience. The customer wants to be very convenient to get in there and get his fuel and get out of there. If you put your canopies behind your store, it just makes it pretty much inconvenient for that person. So I don't think it would be actually a good thing for our industry. I think that, and that's what I was telling the staff, is that I really like this concept. This is what I want to do. So as far as being in the corridor, it didn't bother me at all. I think it's a great way to go. It gets away from some of the commercial aspects of that industry. But going as far as putting it in the back, I think would be pretty.
Well, the other part of this is the widening of Common Street and our new facilities out there at our airports. So we've got to, we're beautifying that type of thing. So.
Right. I think the landscaping can really help that look in the front. If you put the architectural design and you do the proper landscaping, then I really think that that'll do a whole lot for that view that you're trying to.
Okay. Just some sidebar comments. Not the time to talk about it. So.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Got a motion to approve from Mrs. Brown. I got a second from Mr. Navarre. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Y'all get built, bring us some food.
Samples.
Yes.
Next.
Next. Have them purple gorillas like they got over there.
Next, number 10, take appropriate action on RZ 04-004-10, a request by Bell Commercial for rezoning from I-2 heavy industrial to I-1 light industrial to allow a light industrial park on North Bourdain Road in Ward 4. Ms. Wallace.
This property is south of Sulphur, and it consists of 34 acres. The property is zone I-2 heavy industrial now, and the petitioners would like to downzone that to I-1 light industrial. They do wish to construct a 9-lot light industrial subdivision. It would be named Bell Industrial Park. And located within this park, they're proposing commercial and light industrial businesses. The buildings will be metal with brick facades. There will be hard surface front parking and driveways. Rear parking and laydown areas would be aggregate. And currently the property is vacant. The staff does recommend that this request be granted with a number of stipulations. Those stipulations are that the development adhere to the site plan on file, provided the Director of Planning can authorize adjustments, that all signs be low-profile monument signs, that the dumpster areas and storage areas be in the rear of the lots with a 6-foot wooden fence enclosure, that the buildings have a facade that is non-metal, that all alcohol sales be prohibited, that a landscaping plan be submitted and approved by the Division of Planning prior to permit issuance, that a developer's agreement be signed with the Division of Planning and Development prior to a certificate of occupancy being issued, parking and driveways in the front of the buildings be hard surfaced, that the development adhere to stormwater best management practices, that the sewer be approved by DHH, and that there is no discharge to roadside ditches, and that a notice of intent for application for an Louisiana Pollution Elimination System permit through DEQ be submitted to our office prior to permit issuance.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wallace. Any questions, comments?
Motion for approval.
I got a motion from Mr. Doucette.
Second.
A second from Mr. Bro. All in favor state aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes unanimously. Oh, Mr. Gilreath, taking credit for it. And number 11, take appropriate action on case RZ01-005-10, request by Julian Bruce to revert the west 220 feet of the property previously zoned by virtue of ordinance number 4605, adopted by the police jury on August the 21st, 2003, from light industrial to I-2 heavy industrial to C3 central business commercial, and to rezone the east 288 feet from light industrial to I-2 heavy industrial to allow stockpiling of construction material on Highway 171 in Ward 1. Ms. Wallace.
This property is located in Moss Bluff, and it is a unique situation. And before I explain everything to you, I just want to let you know that Mr. Bruce has been very accommodating of the staff, and that we met a number of times to hammer out a request that we felt would work well from the Planning and Zoning Board perspective and from the petitioner's perspective. The property was zoned C3 general commercial and central business commercial and A1 agricultural before it was rezoned in 2003. In order to give Mr. Bruce a little bit more freedom with his property, we would like to have the front 200 feet of the property downzoned, reverted back to the C3 central business commercial from the I1 and I2 zoning that took place in 2003. And on this property, Mr. Bruce would like to have manufactured home sales. We would like to allow him to do that there, and as I said before, just give him some flexibility, and that would allow him to do any C3 use, any commercial, light commercial use, anything like that in this property. So we're basically saying that we would revert him to C3 and remove any stipulations on that property. This is in the design corridor, so anything that he does on that front part of the property would have to comply with those standards. But other than that, the Planning and Zoning Board wouldn't impose any stipulations. Now to tackle the back part of the property. The back part of the property is zoned I-1 light industrial now, and that happened in 2003. And in 2003, Mr. Bruce asked for us to do that so that he could have his contractor shop there and store equipment. And in his 2003 request, he also asked to be able to store materials there. The rezoning passed, but the police jury and the Planning and Zoning Board put a stipulation that he could not store his materials at this site. And Mr. Bruce feels like he really needs to store materials at this location to operate his contractor shop more efficiently. So when we worked out this compromise with Mr. Bruce, the staff suggested to him that he go ahead and request the rezoning to I-2 to allow the stockpiling of materials, but that he keep it in the rear of the property. John, if you could pull up the site plan so that we could run through it. And you all do have a copy of this in your packet, but what we've proposed here is on the front 250 feet that we would revert to C3 commercial. You see that there's screening in the front that consists of 4-foot berms with trees planted on top and a low-profile monument sign which keep him in compliance with the interim development ordinance design standards. And on the rear part of the property is where he would store his materials and his equipment. He would also have a shop and a manufactured home for a caretaker. So the staff does recommend that this request be granted. We do want to have some stipulations on the rear portion of the property, the I-2 portion, and those would be that the I-2 development adhere to the site plan on file, that the west 250 feet of the access road be hard surfaced within 1 year of zoning approval, that DOTD approval on his access be submitted prior to a permit issuance, that the natural screening be maintained on the east property line, and that the north and south property lines of the I-2 development be screened with an 8-foot wooden fence or a 4-foot berm finished with grass and trees within 1 year of zoning approval.
Thank you, Ms. Wallace. While Mr. Bruce is stepping to the mic, does anyone have any questions or comments?
The rear of the property, what's in the rear of the property? Are there homes behind?
No, there's actually a drainage lateral. If you could switch to, and it's agricultural.
It used to
on
be
the other side of the
agricultural.
tree
There's
line.
pine trees have grown up for quite a few years now. I think there might be a deer lease back behind it. I'm not sure.
No, sir, it's all rice.
Oh, it's still agricultural, okay.
It's all rice fields and cattle.
Please state your name and address, sir.
Julian Bruce. I live at 4000 J. Bruce Road in Moss Bluff. And I've had this property several years now. And I'd like to work with Jennifer, as I have, to comply with whatever we need to do to change it.
Thank you. Any questions? Yes, Mr. Doucette?
I know that, we look at, height limitations for visibility from the highway. Have we considered that in this? I mean, if we give him an acre or, 5,000 square feet to stockpile things, I mean, at what point, 'cause there's a track hole on that property, you can probably get that thing pretty high, and it doesn't matter what kind of trees we put or berms we put, it's still going to be visible from the road. I mean, so are we going to limit that? Is it something that's just a temporary drop-off for you, sir, or so you can then dispose of it, or?
No. I have an 8-foot fence that divides the property right behind. It's about halfway, I think, 250 feet. And I have an 8-foot fence, and I'll continue that fence on to the other property line, and I'll keep all my equipment, and any stockpiling I do will more than likely be sand and limestone, and I can keep that, I can keep that down below 10 feet.
But you're stockpiling it as a usage.
Yes.
So you're putting it there and then it's going to leave the site.
Right.
That was my question. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Motion for approval.
Well, I got one more gentleman who would like to speak. Zoe Zardler. Please state your name and address, sir.
My name is Joe Zartler. I live at 327 Cobb Circle in Moss Bluff. I just have a couple questions. This young lady answered a few of them while I was sitting here. But what's the front half of the property going to be used for again? Did I hear you correctly?
What we're proposing is that it just be reverted back to the original C3 zoning, which would allow any commercial uses there. But Mr. Bruce at this time plans to sell manufactured homes.
No problem. Okay. I will like to say one thing. Mr. Bruce does use the back portion. He keeps it very orderly. You can't see from the highway what he has back there now. One thing I would like to ask this board, and I'm going to go to the police jury meeting on Thursday night and ask them the same thing. I think that all prior approvals should be completed before there are any other projects approved. I'm not against the project, but I think all previous approvals should be completed. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
I had a question.
Yes, Mr. Connor.
What do you mean by that?
Well,
what prior project?
Well, there was a approval given on a trailer park 2 miles south of this. It's owned by Mr. Bruce. That he started building, and then the Hurricane Rita came, and he was given an extension to bring FEMA trailers in there, and he testified in 2007 at another zoning hearing that as soon as the FEMA trailers were removed, he was going to complete it. Well, the other half never got completed. And that's all I have to say. I used to be a zoning officer and code enforcement officer, and when I see things like this happen, I just can't condone it. I'm not picking on Mr. Bruce. I think that prior approvals should be completed before there's any other approvals given. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to address that comment, Mr. Bruce?
I don't know what he's talking about.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay. The original approval for that trailer park that Mr. Vickers should know about it. He gave the extension. We're supposed to have concrete pads, and that half of that mobile home park never got completed. Half of it did. When the hurricane came, the other half there was FEMA trailers put on there, and it was supposed to be completed after the FEMA trailers were removed. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
My motion still stands. Motion for
Okay, I got a motion from Mr. Doucette, second from Mr. Baker. Let's do a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Mr. Doucette?
Yes.
Mr. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Bro?
Yes.
Mr. Porche?
Yes.
Ms. Cobb?
Yes.
Mr. Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Connor?
Yes.
Mr. Gilry?
Yes.
Mr. Navarre?
Yes.
And Chair Duhan?
Yes.
11 for.
Okay, passes unanimously. Next is take appropriate action on ST01-002-10, a request by Calcasieu Parish Police Jury to reclassify certain tracts of land in Ward 1 near the intersection of the east side of 171 and Clyde Delaney Road to enlarge the current commercial zoning district. Ms. Wallace?
This property is in Moss Bluff, and in March of this year, the police jury authorized the staff to take a look at this area to see if rezoning the property was feasible. This property is located off of Highway 171 North, and most of it fronts on Clyde Delaney Road, and a part of the property is on the south side and a part is on the north side. The land consists of 190 acres, more or less, and the property is zoned, is used agriculturally right now, or has been in the past. There is only one property owner in this study area, and we have been in close contact with that owner, and he is aware of the zoning boundaries and our proposed rezoning of the property and the stipulation to impose interim development standards, design standards on the Clyde Delaney Road portion. We haven't seen much development in this area over the past 5 years, but we do anticipate long-term future of this property to develop commercially. And with all that being said, the staff does recommend that these properties, the 190 acres, be reclassified to C3 Central Business Commercial. And we would ask you that if you grant that zoning, that you also impose the design standards from the interim development ordinance on the Clyde Delaney Road frontage.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Motion for approval
Got a motion
on
from
this
Mr. Doucette.
with the IDO standards imposed.
Okay. Need a second? Second from Mrs. Cobb. All in favor state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. You got to be quick.
So what do you call it? Point of personal privilege? If I want to say something.
Point of order. Point of order.
Well, after making such an issue last month about, some of us that don't catch on so quick on these things that wasn't clear to me. This is just so clear. I fully understand what you're asking us to do, and thank you, staff, for clarifying that.
Next is to advise that the police jury took the following action on the applicant, Calcasieu Parish Police Jury. That was on Highway 14-397. We granted it. The police jury upheld it. The next meeting for the zoning board will be on June 15th, 2010, in the police jury room here at 5:30. Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion. All in favor? Adjourn.